Hello everyone, my name is Jack McKelvey. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover how I went about creating this construction site over the course of an afternoon. It's made up of entirely Megascans assets with the assistance of a handful of custom-made meshes utilizing Unreal Engine's suite of modeling tools. The first thing I did was set aside an area in the map for a zoo containing all of the assets I wanted to use. With a zoo, it was very easy to follow my gut, grabbing assets that I was inspired to do something with. You'll see me jumping between the environment and this zoo frequently throughout the video. I imported these assets using the Fab plugin inside Unreal Engine. It's quick and easy, you just click the Fab button in the content browser and find the asset you want. You can also use Fab in Launcher for any other DCC or engine if you want to quickly import assets from Fab. This can be especially helpful for custom workflows outside of UE5. In this case, I want to select Unreal Engine 5.6 and clicking Export will bring it into my open project. I've set up this basic scene with my directional light set to 100,000 lux for a bright sunny day, added a post-process volume with infinite extent enabled, and I have done nothing custom with the exposure settings. I've added a cube and a plane to the scene with the approximate sizes I'm looking for in my blockout. I've also added a sign camera, dialed in the focus settings, and set up my focus length to be 16mm for a wider shot. I'd like to briefly go over the hotkeys I'll be utilizing throughout the video. The transform hotkeys will be used regularly, and I've also rebinded cycling transforms from world to local and back to world for added transform control. Mirroring assets is useful for disguising repeating assets. Lastly, paste here is useful for copy and then pasting an asset wherever I last left mouse button clicked. Before we get into set dressing, I'd like to convert this box and plane, which are currently engine assets, to their own unique static meshes. We can do this by navigating to the modeling tools, Xform, and then duplicate. Before I tessellate this mesh, I need to bake the transforms. Without baking the transforms, any remeshing will stretch triangles, reflecting the scaling changes I made to the original assets. Now it's time to tessellate these assets. While these numbers may be too high for a real-time project, I'm primarily looking to ensure that Lumen has enough geometry to light these larger surfaces in a strictly cinematic capacity. Now that I've tessellated these assets, I need to UV them. Given that they're very basic, I can select Auto UV, leave the settings default, and it'll work for this environment. The last thing that needs to be done before we jump into set dressing is to ensure that these assets have nanite enabled. To start set dressing, I'd like to build on the larger and structural elements of the frame first, and so I have a strong foundation to work from. Shipping containers will act as a barrier to keep viewers' eyes inside the frame, while at the same time the leading lines help to pull the viewer's attention towards the building. Next, I want to add some pillars to hold up a second floor. This will create an interesting lighting scenario and will provide more surface area for interesting details in set dressing. Now I just want to block off the sides and rear of the building to keep the scene simple and focused on the construction area. I'm heading over to the zoo to see what I want to add next. I decided on adding some piles of rock and sand to help shape the composition further and experiment with how they add to the scene. I want to add some blocks to the composition. They add a lot of interesting detail, cat shadows well, and can be set dressed to add some story and some more organic breakup to the scene. I like to make small rotations to assets to prevent them from being perfectly aligned with any other leading lines in the scene. Breaking up those perfect lines really help to sell the realism of an environment. A hotkey I forgot to mention is holding Control and left-right mouse button clicking and dragging. This is a little known hotkey that can help you transform and rotate assets without needing to use the widgets. Organic assets, like these bags of concrete, present opportunities to set dress them against one another. Leaning an asset against another, like how they might be set down by workers, adds a nice touch of realism and makes the space feel more alive. Wherever I start adding assets, I like to build out the story from those anchor points. Since I added bags of cement to the middle right of the scene, I wanted to add a cement mixer to complement those assets. Similar to how I use shipping containers on the left side of the scene, I also want to break up the leading lines of the building to the right. Just like with the cement section, I want to start building out the story for this area, adding waste materials to the surrounding area. The building is starting to look a bit basic, so I want to start building out the story for this area further. Adding partially constructed areas is a great way to suggest that the building is a work in progress. Here I want to play around with making some sort of scaffolding. It'll add some verticality to the scene, a little bit more visual interest, just in terms of how detailed it is, and it'll allow me to break up some of the scene's composition. Packed level actors are useful to create reusable prefabs to assist with set dressing. This is especially useful since they can be updated later, and those updates will propagate to all other instances. A fast and effective way at reducing repetition is to break apart existing packed level instances, make some changes, and repackage as another variation of the same asset. It's efficient and it's a lot easier than making another version from scratch. Now I'm just gonna copy these scaffolds over to the main scene and I'm just gonna play around with them. I wanna dock my camera and pay attention to how the scaffolds are affecting the scene in different positions. A lot of times I'll just copy over existing assets just to play with the idea that maybe I want to change something entirely. I'm really liking how the scaffolds are looking on the second floor. They're blocking a lot of the background sky, which I'm not really doing anything fancy with, so I want to make sure to keep the focus on the assets themselves. Now, once again, I'm just playing with the idea of having this scaffolding be more of a focal point. It's not the focal point for the scene, but I definitely want something a little bit taller to contribute to blocking out the main part of the building. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate the assembly again, and I want to get rid of those bottom posts, and so this can be double stacked. Now's a good time to start playing with the lighting. I have an idea of what I want, but now that I have some assets placed, I'd like to see how the lighting and shadows are working from different angles, and so I can find a light direction I'm happy with. Next, I'd like to take a look at some of the different default lighting settings to see where I can improve the look of the scene. The skylight is too intense, the fog is too visible inside the building, and I want to push the directional light's ambient contribution just a touch. These settings can also be accessed via the Environment Light Mixer tab. This can be very useful when refining a lighting setup. And now that I have my lighting a bit more finalized, I want to play around with the light direction again to further refine how I want my lighting to look. Now that the lighting and set dressing in the midground is coming along, I want to start filling out the foreground with some assets. Whenever I start feeling like I'm losing traction on an area, I like to shift gears and reapproach some other areas, adding details and history. I'm going back to the foreground to work with fresh eyes, and there's a great opportunity to stack up some metal equipment that I haven't used yet. These metal pieces add some great material variation to the scene, and I want to pile it up in a way that will add some more leading lines to my focal point. As I've mentioned, bricks cast very nice shadows, so I want to use some for the bottom of my frame to add some nice, up-close foreground detail. Advancing the story for the cement mixing area, I want to add a ramp, wheelbarrow, and some other props to the area. I'm shifting gears again because I'm not totally sure where I want to take the cement mixing area. I do need some brick chunks to complement the foreground and suggest that a brick or two were accidentally broken. So I'm set dressing some of those chunks of brick, and I'm going to make it a level instance that I can hand place and quickly update. Currently, the building roof and floor have perfect straight edges and really need a pass to break up those edges to look more realistic. There's a lot of ways to do this, but for a quick cinematic environment, it's enough to take these concrete slabs, resize them, and match them up to the existing geometry as closely as I can. Getting to the finer details, I'd like to grab some hand tools to place around the environment where it makes sense. Now that the environment is coming together, I want to add some natural height variation in the ground. The approach I'm taking is by using the Displace tool found in the Modeling mode under the Deform tab. At this point, I'm really trying to refine different areas. I'm playing around with ideas where I can reinforce the notion that people work here, and that I'm capturing a specific point in time during this construction effort. I want to take some time to go over the blend material that I'm using for the ground. I have a section for tiling, per layer tiling controls, texture parameters that loop into adjustments for each texture, make material attributes for each respective layer, and then I blend the layers using material layer blends. If we take a closer look at the paint named reroute node, we'll find what's driving the layer blending. Instead of vertex painting, we're going to utilize a mesh paint texture to paint these layers to our mesh. I need to select my ground mesh, navigate to the mesh painting section in the details panel, and override the advanced settings. Now I can go to the mesh paint mode, select the texture color tab, and then click the add button to add a virtual texture to my mesh. From there, I can paint layers to my heart's desire. Now I'll simply repeat the process and start experimenting with painting my layers to complement the existing set dressing. With the lighting I've set up, the material layers seem a little extreme in their brightness changes. So I'm going to go through the layers to try and better match the look of the layer I like the most. I also want one layer to match the piles as closely as I can to help hide the seams made by intersecting these meshes. I've downloaded 3 decals that are not included in this collection to add some weathering and cover up some seams. This is a very powerful technique to add a level of polish to the seam. You'll also notice that I frequently use surface snapping when working with decals, which helps to reduce the time needed to get the correct orientation of a decal when placing it. After adding some leakage stains to the exposed concrete, I want to add some basic dust accumulation on some of these foreground assets. While looking for decals, I also grabbed a few rocks that were not included in this collection. I feel like it rounds out the blend material quite nicely and gives a little bit more depth. Now I want to add some dynamism to the lighting. One of my favorite ways to do this is by adding cloud shadows to my directional light using a light function. The light function material has controls for tiling, starting placement, cloud intensity, and contrast. All I need to do now is assign this material to the light function material slot in my directional light source. There's several other things I'd like to do now. First, I want to angle my main shot to be lower since there's so much sky in the frame with nothing really in it. I moved some stuff around in the foreground to add some natural shadows that act like a vignette. And now I want to use the scaffolding to add some long shadows to help break up the even lighting. Currently I'm seeing two bold focal points that are heavily weighted to the right side of my frame. I want to add some set dressing for another focal point in the center left of the frame, and so my eyeline can bounce between these focal points. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial walkthrough, and until next time.